for joining us today. We appreciate your time and wanted to let everyone know we'll be recording this so that all of our small businesses will have access to this important information at any time at their convenience. My name is Natalie. I oversee the small business lending team. Tyler, if you could wave. Many of you probably know Tyler. He is my right-hand man, and we really work, the both of us together with all new businesses coming in, seeking loans for their small business. Just to kick off, as a reminder about SCED, we serve the state of Kansas in three primary areas. We are providing weatherization services to low-income residents across the state of Kansas. We also provide grant writing services for communities who need help with repairing their infrastructure. So if you can think about Keachai, Kansas, there's a beautiful playhouse on one of their major intersections, and they needed help applying for a grant to restore it. And so our experienced grant writing team went through the process of writing that for the city of Keachai and was able to assist them. Our grant writing team has also helped many communities with relief funding for their communities. And so that's an expertise that can be sought out from a community perspective. And then the final area where we help the state of Kansas is through our small business loans. Typically, we're working with those individuals who are unable to gain a loan from a traditional bank. And so they're referred to us or come to us seeking a small business loan. Our loans average anywhere from about $40,000 all the way up to, I recently just closed a $5 million loan. We're providing loans for small businesses to just inject cash into their business, to start, to purchase. We've got a lot of renovation going on right now. We've got a lot of expansions. As you've probably seen, consistent with what the Wichita Business Journal reported in the last month, we have many small businesses who no longer want to rent, and so they're going and purchasing their own commercial real estate. So we've got a lot of that activity as well. So we are assisting entrepreneurs with that access to capital, but like today's session, not only are we providing those loans, but because we're a nonprofit, we're also equipping small businesses with business skills in order to continue operating. So the small businesses that we work with contact us for help with financial literacy. We will get you those contacts to help you increase your financial literacy. We are helping them with their social media. If you haven't met our social media expert, please make sure that you connect with myself or Tyler. He's doing a lot of social media for the small businesses. And then I'm also rolling out here in a couple of months a new program that brings some law resources to all of you. And this is all available for our small businesses that have access to our loan program. So just a lot of really good resources. That's the mission of our loan program, is to not only provide those loans, but to educate and equip sustainable small businesses. Today's presentation is extremely important. As we all know, cybersecurity is fluid and an important topic for us to discuss and become realistic with. Just on Friday afternoon, I received a phone call from a current borrower within our organization who had experienced a ransomware attack. She's now 60 days behind on billings and is really uncertain what that next path is. So it was very important to make that aware to all of you. We are not immune to this risk. In fact, our own organization has had issues with this. And so with further ado, I'd like to really turn it over to Brian Dennis. He's a former colleague of mine. I thank him for this time. Brian is the current director of Cybersecurity for Business, and I'll let him share more information with you.
Thank you, Natalie. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a dive into cybersecurity here. So just real quick, I like people to know what we're talking about. And so I'm going to run through just an agenda, what you guys can expect to learn today. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction about myself and what I do. put some expectations of learning out there. I will show you some live demos, and so you can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about. And then we'll take a dive into the cybersecurity framework, which is something I think all small businesses should be paying attention to right now. It helps them formulate their plans as far as what they're going to do when they're attacked. So as Natalie said, I'm Brian Dennis. I'm the director of the Cybersecurity Center for Business, for small business, and all businesses really is who we're working with nowadays. I started, my career has kind of been a weird trajectory of sorts. My background is actually Cajun. I'm from as far south Louisiana as you can get. I just don't sound like it. Everybody's always surprised by that. In 2005, I had a completely different life where I was running coffee shops. I had 37 coffee shops spread throughout New Orleans. We lost everything in Katrina. And so I became a pseudo expert in disaster recovery for businesses. I was able to rebuild over the 2 years following Katrina, and then kind of picked up my work and ended up in, of all places, Kansas, where I was helping create a business continuity program for the state of Kansas's Small Business Development Center. And it was in Kansas that I also really got into cybersecurity and began working much more towards a career in cyber. And that's how I ended up now in Wisconsin, of all places. And so I kind of have taken a strange pathway to get here, but it's been a really good one. And so expectations and takeaways for today is I want you guys to see a cyber attack. You hear about them all the time. But there's so many out there that are happening every day: ransomware, phishing, malware, all of this is going on. And a lot of us don't know what these things look like until you actually see it. Understanding the consequences, and then how do you relate to that and take that back to your business and make the changes that you need to make. And so, this is all that I do. So I work with businesses of all sizes. And we are really focused on giving people the opportunity to really develop their skills to become better stewards, really, of their digital footprint. We really, really push that, all of our businesses today are connected in some way, shape, or form. And if we don't begin making changes now, it's only going to get worse. And so that's what we really want to think about. So phishing is the first thing I'm going to talk about. And I'm sure everybody's heard of phishing. It starts very simply. You get an email that comes through and it looks legit. Usually it involves an urgent request. There's some type of problem with your account, or a password need to change. And then they want you to click on something. They want you to click on a link and just jump into their website, potentially give away information. And that's really what they're going for. It's a vulnerability attack. And so this is an actual email that I got from Netflix that said, email updated. We received your request to change your email address as you asked. Please click here if you did not request an email address change. So I get this email in, and I immediately, I am a Netflix subscriber, and I begin to think, well, I don't remember changing my email. But then I also wanted to start taking a look at, is this a legitimate is this really coming from Netflix? You see the Netflix logo. You see, it looks pretty legit. I actually called this number, and that number actually goes to Netflix. It is a 1-800 number for Netflix that exists. All of this information down here is the same type of information you would get from Netflix. And so it looks very, very real. It was the email address where it came from is what I noticed. And so Netflix145 $@gmail.com. Netflix would never email me from a Gmail account. And so I automatically knew that this was a phishing attack. But it's a very good one. And so what I also know is that this same attack netted about $16 or $17 million is what they believe by the time this one was done. And this attack came out 2 years ago. So when you think about the amount of money that they were able to pull in, the data that they pulled in, and then the ability to sell that data and steal information and steal credit card numbers, all of the stuff they needed, they got with this one email, and they were very successful at it. Another type of attack that we see happening quite often is a distributed denial of service attack, or a DDoS attack. This is when small businesses of any size, or big businesses even see this too. They're attacked, and basically this isn't as much of a ransomware attack as it is just, we're going to stop all information coming into your website and traffic will completely cease. And so this is the type of thing that you might see if somebody's going to your website, but you're currently having a DDoS attack. And so when these attacks happen, if you're a small business who relies on the internet, this potentially can be crippling. We've seen these attacks last for weeks, and they're not necessarily out there to make money. These are just vicious attacks that we see hackers do, honestly, more than anything for fun. And it's really infuriating because a lot of the times it can potentially shut down a business completely. Another attack that we're seeing quite often, and it surprises a lot of business owners, is inside attacks. You may never think that somebody within your own organization potentially could be breaking into your systems, but it happens way more than we really should be seeing these days. Accidental attacks, meaning that potentially somebody opened something in a computer and allowed an accident to happen, definitely a huge component, but intentional attacks are growing. And then there's a lot of unknowns out there, but that's something that we're definitely seeing more and more of every day. I'm contacted by businesses from across the country who are dealing with these incidents. In fact, there was a hair salon that I dealt with just recently who had let an employee go, and they should have changed their passwords. They should have changed everything and not taken away that employee's access the second they let her go, but they didn't. And she went home, got back into their system, into their scheduling system, and deleted their entire schedule. That doesn't seem like that big of a deal until you realize that this was a very, very busy hair salon who all of a sudden had no idea when clients were showing up. They lost a lot of clients because of this inside attack. And that right there is a cyber attack. Keyloggers are something else that we're seeing these days. It looks like a little USB drive. And what it can do is basically you can plug it into a computer. A lot of people might not even notice that it's there. And it's just going to steal everything, passwords, account information, everything. Somebody comes, grabs it, walks away, and they have access to it all. This is actually more of a problem in education. You'd be amazed at some of the people I've talked to who found 12 and 13-year-old kids with these. They plug them into their teacher's computer, and the next thing you know, they have access to all of the tests and all of the answers. And so we're seeing these types of little devices, which you can order through Amazon for $10. They pop up everywhere. Malware is another issue that a lot of us are dealing with. It's really just malicious software. It's program code. It comes into your computer and can really wreak havoc. It's the thing that causes all of those pop-ups. It could be installed on a system running outdated virus protection, which is something I'm really, really evangelistic about, is update your virus protection constantly. Because if you don't, this is what happens. You can't do anything without the pop-ups coming up. And this can completely slow down a system, and it can completely overwhelm everything. The next thing you know, you're having to reboot your computer all the time. You can't get any type of work done. And this is a cyber attack that's happening. Password attacks are growing. Unfortunately, we have some people out there, and they call themselves ethical hackers, and ethical hackers are great. What they're doing is they're really working to help make systems safer. But one team of ethical hackers, in their goal to help make people safer, designed a password cracker that can take a 55-character password made up of letters, numbers, and symbols and crack it in about 5 minutes. And then, unfortunately, they put that code out there into the world, and so now attackers actually have it as well. And so passwords are something that we're really, really pushing the importance of and what we can do to better protect ourselves from them. Here's a really kind of neat thing if you ever want to try it. How secure is my password? If you just Google them. This was created by a couple of guys in the Air Force. The Air Force has a very good cybersecurity team. And it's kind of a fun way to show how quickly your password can be cracked. And so I think the first time I tried this, it was, it said about 30 seconds to crack my password. I think I'm up to about 36 hours. And so at least I know I'm a little bit safer. Ransomware, as Natalie just talked about, is the largest growing threat within the cyber community right now. A ransomware attack happens every 40 seconds now. In 2020, ransomware attacks increased by 535%. If you added up all of the money that ransomware attacks netted in the last 5 years and just took all of those folks and put them into their own little country, their GDP would be the third highest in the world. That's how much money that people are making off of ransomware attacks right now. When an attack happens, it will debilitate a small business. It will shut you down. It will shut everything down. You can't run email, you can't send invoices, potentially loss of design work. All of these things that make your business, especially in an online format, will cease to exist until you either A, pay the ransom, or B, hire somebody to come in and do a complete overhaul of your system to bring it back. What we know is that it's just getting worse. And so what we're really pushing is for understanding ransomware. And so here's the definition of ransomware. It's on a link. Somebody sent me this link this morning. I don't remember who it was, but they told me it was safe. And so I'm going to track it. Wait, that shouldn't be happening. Okay, I'm kidding. Obviously, this is what a ransomware attack looks like. You accidentally click on a link. The next thing you know, your entire system has been compromised. This is a little piece of ransomware attack. Ransomware is called Bad Rabbit. This is how awful ransomware is right now. We can go online and we can download this very piece of code right here for a couple $100. We can go to Best Buy and buy a kind of a cheap laptop for another few $100. And then we can go online and buy, let's call it 150,000 email addresses from people. And so we can take those 150,000 emails, we can send this out in a link saying, hey, I've got some pictures I want you to see, click on this link to see it. If we can get a 3% hit rate, by the end of the day, we'll have about $36,000 in cash. That's untraceable because we're going to have it dropped into Bitcoin. This is happening every day, all over the place, and it's debilitating our small businesses. And if we have a massive ransomware attack in the United States, like Europe did a few years ago, it could potentially shut down our entire economy. And so the only reason they work is because of our poor cybersecurity hygiene. And so if we were to just be better stewards of our digital footprint, as I say quite often, this would stop happening. The only reason it works is because of us, and we need to make that change. Advanced persistent threats, that's something that's out there, and it's one of the things that a lot of small business owners will ask me about. This is when you think about the nation states that are out there, Iran, China, North Korea, Russia. All of these nation states have very, very impressive teams of cyber folks, and they're running code that looks a lot like this. And unfortunately, if Russia, North Korea, China, or Iran, or one of the other nation states that's really active in cyber, if they want to come and take out your small business, they're gonna. There's really not much you can do. And so I wouldn't stay up at night worrying about it. Also, the likelihood of that happening isn't really that high. They're going after much bigger infrastructure pieces, obviously going after the government, going after our election systems. They're not necessarily going after small businesses, which is one thing that we can stop worrying about at least. And so all of that takes us to what can we start doing as business owners to better protect ourselves? And I think the best place to start is with NIST. And so NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they developed a framework for improving cybersecurity. This framework has been rolled out over the last 10 years, and I really like the concepts behind it. If you try to go to NIST and download all of the information on the framework, it's very detailed and very complicated. And so what I like to do is just break it down into 5 simple concepts. The first one is, what can I do to identify? Start thinking about what's connected to your systems, what's connected to your networks, what type of software are you running, what devices are you running? And so we know a lot of small businesses out there potentially running computers that might be using Windows 7, for example. Windows 7 has pretty much no protection left on it. And so start looking at and taking a kind of an inventory of what you have within your business. The next piece up is detect. How do you detect a cyber attack? As small business owners, we're constantly trying to push the idea that to better protect yourself means that you need to start noticing things. If every time your computer opens up in the morning, it's running very, very slow. If you have that little box that pops up and you think it's annoying every day and you just click it to go away that says update your computer, you might have something happening within your system. We know right now the average cyber attack is rolling around in a small business's system for about 240 days. And so think about that. Think about the damage that can be done to your business if you have somebody just rummaging through everything for over 6 months. And so we're seeing this happen more and more. The concepts of detecting and really figuring out the impact of an event just hasn't really resonated with our business owners yet, but it needs to. Then the concept of protect. You've got to start protecting your business. Do you use firewalls? Are you encrypting information within your system to make it safer? Do you allow folks to access files remotely? When your employees go home, are they working from home? 2020 saw a ton of us moving home and working out of our houses. Were we using really safe networks to do that? Usernames. What are you doing to protect usernames and passwords, and how often are you requiring them to be changed? Are you sharing passwords? These are the things that will help protect us, and we're just not necessarily doing a great job of that. One more key factor is the concept of respond. How do you respond to an incident? Have you really ever had to think about it? When cyber attacks happen, you're going to be judged on how you really handle it. So that first 24 hours is going to be important. Do you need to reach out and contact an attorney who potentially can work with you to take you through this process? Will you need marketing to really help rebuild that image and your brand as you move forward? And how do you contain the event? And so if you know that you've had a cyber attack where potentially your email system has been corrupted and you're sending out business exchange emails to folks, how can you actually stop that in its tracks? And then the last and hardest piece of a cyber attack is recover. A lot of people don't know this, but 60% of businesses that are attacked will go out of business in 6 months. That number has been holding true for about 3 years now. And so when Natalie mentioned that one of her clients that had a ransomware attack, I get nervous when I hear that, because I know that the potential for losing that business is very, very high. And so you've got to recover from an attack. Recovery can take 6 months to a year to recover after a cyber attack. My brother-in-law works for a company in Richmond, Virginia, that is a $2 billion a year company. And they had a ransomware attack in April of this year, and they still don't have access to their emails. This company has locations all over the globe, and the way that they connect with each other right now is via phone. And so imagine that you have to place an order for one of your companies in Kuala Lumpur. You have to call that company in the middle of the night to make sure that this can work. And so it's really debilitating to big businesses. Think about what it can do to small businesses. It's just overwhelming. And so as we start thinking about what can we do as small business owners to really prepare for this, like I said earlier in that identify piece, start thinking about what's connected to your system. The devices that are connected to your network, is your network safe? And what mobile devices are you allowing to be connected? A few things that I've seen over the years are a lot of small businesses will have wireless networks available, and potentially will have those same wireless networks running their credit card machines. And so imagine going into a coffee shop and you have a Wi-Fi network available and it's the same network running your credit cards. Could that be a problem? Absolutely. Also, are you allowing just anyone to connect? And so start thinking about who is connecting to your computers, and what type of devices are they using to do that. Hardware is really important. Start thinking about it right now. One of the things that I really focus on is, other type of hardware that we just don't really consider a safety issue. Printers, for example. A lot of people just have printers that they've had for years and it might be sitting in the back corner. And nowadays, how much do we really print? Not that much. But printers are notoriously unsecure. And they're a really great way for attackers to get into a business and begin ciphering data out, because they can take you directly to the network. And so that's one of the things that we want you to think about is, how could somebody get back into my network? We have a lot of businesses that are now introducing different types of devices into their systems. And so the Internet of Things, and we might see, everybody, Amazon Alexa, a lot of people have that at home, but I've seen that popping up in businesses. Potentially Wi-Fi connected thermostats have been a new trend that a lot of businesses are using. All of these things come with a level of security that isn't necessarily the safest. There was a very large casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, that had a fish tank. And inside this fish tank, they had a digital thermometer so they could measure the water temperature at any time they wanted to. It was through that digital thermometer that hackers got in and stole all of the information of all of their biggest whale clients, as they called them. And it really, really hurt them. A lot of those clients left. And so that's the type of way that we're seeing these things happen. A lot of the concepts of data are really kind of lost on small businesses. You need to store data, but what do I need to store? How do I need to store it? We're seeing, there's a lot of things, ideas about keeping email. What applications are you running? Are you storing sensitive documents? Are you storing media? Do you make videos or anything else? And how do you actually store that? Applications are something that I talk about very often because they're just notoriously unsafe. So when you think about apps, it's kind of crazy the amount of zero security that's going into applications these days, especially on our phones. So the Weather Channel app, for example, it's a great app. It can give you the weather any time of day. It shows 10 days out. But it's not owned by the Weather Channel. It's owned by IBM. And the reason it's owned by IBM is because so many people use it, and it's just a great source for IBM to just take data off of your phone. They take down your location. They track where you are. They track where you shop. You'll sit around sometime and wonder, why am I getting ads that are very, very specific to things that I've been thinking about or potentially doing? And that's because you're being tracked, and that's what IBM is doing. But so many of these other apps are doing it for much, much more nefarious reasons. And so we really start thinking about that stored data and what you need to do to keep it safe. A lot of our small businesses are moving to the cloud right now. On the surface, the cloud is a really great idea. You can save a lot of space. You don't necessarily need to invest in a ton of servers. You easily store large amounts of data. It does require a safe connection, and you really need to have a level of trust with your cloud provider. The clouds that are out there, they are secure to a point. What we really want business owners to know is that they are always under attack. And so, unfortunately, I can't say that any cloud is going to be safer than any other cloud. We do know that there's going to be an attack against a cloud one day where tons and tons of data is just going to be siphoned out. It's going to happen. There's too many people working against them to not have that happen. And so it's as safe as we can make it right now is kind of our take on it. Passwords. How many times have you had to click on that button about forgetting your password? Start thinking about what can you do to not have to deal with that. One of my suggestions for small businesses is to get a password locker. And so there's several out there on the market that are pretty decent. There's KeyPass, there's LastPass. And so I use LastPass from myself personally. And again, I understand that there is a level of trust that I have to give to LastPass to make this work. But it is better than having to remember 214 passwords. I've actually counted. That's how many passwords that I have to deal with on a monthly basis. And so the way LastPass works is I know only one password, and that is the password to get me into LastPass. Every other password that I have is a ridiculous amount of letters and numbers, as many as are allowed by the site that I'm on. So somebody could hold me hostage and tell me to give them the password to my bank account. I have no idea what it is. I couldn't tell you. I can tell you that I know my LastPass password, and that's it. And so it really helps us. A password locker can really help those issues. So one of my favorite quotes from a colleague of mine, passwords are like underwear. You don't let people see it. You should change it often, and you shouldn't share it with strangers. It just blows my mind when I do some cybersecurity audits, which I do every once in a while, and I might be walking through a company and I'll hear from one office to another, hey, what's the password to get into Esri? And so I see that, and it just blows me away that sharing passwords is still a thing within businesses. We need to start updating regularly. And this is where I think if you guys could, you would probably reach through the Zoom monitor and start choking me. You need to change all of your passwords probably at least once every 3 months. And I know that seems excessive, but but it's really the safest route to go. And so it is just an annoying nightmare right now. And what cybersecurity professionals are doing is there's a lot of researchers out there figuring out what can we do to get around the password problem, because passwords have just proven they aren't safe. We're constantly having them stolen. We're constantly having credentials that just hashed out from hackers. And so we have to start thinking of new ways to deal with passwords. Biometrics is one way. And so facial scans, thumbprints, all of that stuff is happening, and we're seeing it happen more and more. But I'm pretty certain that within the next 10 years, we will probably have moved away from passwords completely. If so many threats exist, what can be done? And that's what a lot of small business owners think, and so not necessarily a head in the sand mentality, but a lot of our small businesses just won't invest in cybersecurity because they think, well, it's going to happen anyway, so what can I do? There are things we can do. Definitely running a modern system. So if you have a base heavily in the digital world, make sure that you're running as modern a system as you possibly can. It's worth the expense. It will keep you safer. And please, by all means, keep it updated. When I go into a business and they haven't updated their system in 3 years, they've been attacked. I can guarantee you that they've got some type of malicious attack happening in their system right now. And 100% of the time it's happened. I've noticed that every single time. And so, what is good cybersecurity behavior? We really push that the only way to make all of this better is through behavior change. Hackers, cyber terrorists, all of these folks, they depend on us to be bad at this. And that's the only way this works. Sure, advanced persistent threats can get into systems like the SolarWinds attack that happened last year, and that is going to continue to happen. But ransomware attacks, we could stop ransomware attacks today if we were just better at this. It really is that simple. There's a lot of social influence that we're dealing with. At work, we've grown accustomed to taking cyber delivered information as good data. And so what we're seeing is a lot of business email attacks are happening, because we believe if I get an email from my colleague, Natalie, that email is legitimate and it's worth opening. And if she sent me a document, I should go ahead and, click on it and see what's in the email. Unfortunately, we're not there anymore. We have to begin double checking this stuff. And so when I know it's annoying, but whenever I get an email with an attachment and asking me to open something, I call whoever sent it to me and say, did you send this? Trust but verify is really where we are when it comes to that. At home, a lot of us are working on systems that just aren't safe. Most of us have wireless routers at home that were either given to us by our internet service providers or we went and bought at Walmart. All of those routers come with the ability to put passwords on them, but about 60% of American households with Wi-Fi don't have passwords on their routers. And so if you don't, go home and put a password on it, especially if you're working at home with any type of business system. So like last year, so many of us went home and we saw cyber attacks increased by the hundreds and hundreds of percentage points because we were all being so unsafe at home. Social media is another problem that we're seeing within small businesses. That number right there, 650,000, that's how many Facebook accounts are hacked on a daily basis. And that number is actually very, very low, we believe, in the cyber community. That's the number that Facebook will give us. We believe that it's probably closer to 10 to 20 million. And so when you think about that, there's a couple of billion Facebook users out there. That social media piece, it's very, very easy to do a lot of damage to a small business who's running a very active Facebook page. And so if you're running an active Facebook page and somebody gets into your account and begins making awful statements, you can easily lose your business very quickly. And it doesn't matter that you can come out and say, my account was hacked. I don't know how this happened. It happens. And so start thinking about, are you keeping your social media posts safe? And so, when we start thinking that side of it, we also want to start thinking about our workforce. How are your employees dealing with cybersecurity? Especially in small businesses, our users, they have no concept of security threats that exist. They might have heard about ransomware attacks on the news. They might know that it's a problem for big companies like Colonial Pipeline or JBS, these companies that got hit with ransomware attacks. What they don't know is that most ransomware attacks are happening against small businesses. The large majority of ransomware attacks are going into small businesses. And our users and our employees throughout these businesses just don't know. Some folks may get trained like once a year on how to be better, how to have better cybersecurity behavior. But it's just not enough. We have to start thinking about this all the time. The motivation to be better at cyber, it's just not there. And that's one of those really big game changers that we have to begin putting in place. Because doing that will get that knowledge level to where it needs to be. Our employees and our business owners, for that matter, we just aren't doing enough to get the education out there. How do we influence a change? And it has to start somewhere. It begins at the top. And so as business owners, you guys really need to start thinking about what you can do to push those concepts of cybersecurity down through your chain. This actually was said by Robert Mueller a few years ago. There are only two types of organizations: those that have been hacked and those that don't know they've been hacked. 100% of all businesses, 100% of all businesses that are online have been attacked. It's just true. Obviously, not all of them are as destructive as a ransomware attack. A lot of them are just simple phishing attacks that may not have been successful, but the attack has happened. And so we're seeing 90% of our breaches right now will impact small businesses. And when we talk about this and the importance of these breaches, you need to start thinking about not only who are your system is running within your business, but who are you partnering with? We have a lot of small businesses that are partnering with the Department of Defense. We have a lot of businesses that partner with local governments. If you are attacked, they will be attacked. And if your network is connected and potentially sending out information to the DoD or to your local government or to a much larger corporation, it's going to be easier for attackers to use your network to get into theirs. A few years ago, the Department of Defense spent well over $1 trillion to build a brand new fighter jet. This fighter jet was going to be the most sophisticated jet ever built. The second it was going to come off the line, it was going to make American air superiority just completely tops. No one else would be able to compete with us. The design for that plane was stolen. The entire thing from top to bottom was stolen by the Chinese government, and the Chinese government rebuilt one of these planes. They didn't steal a single design element from Boeing or from Lockheed Martin, who were the two main contractors on the jet. They stole it from the small businesses that those two companies were working with. And so when we looked back at what really happened, it started in coffee shops. It started in small design firms. It started in small manufacturers, and it really worked its way up. And so these small businesses, that's where it's going into. That's what we really need to start thinking about. I want all of our business owners to learn. Cyber attacks will continue to occur, and what you need to do is pay attention. When one happens, start thinking about, what did that person do right? What did that person do wrong? When we know ransomware attacks happen, like the one that Natalie was talking about, how did she learn from this, that her system was susceptible to an attack, and what can she what can she do to make sure this never happens again? And last but not least, and this is always my last message before I wrap up, is to, as soon as we're done with this, go double check your backups. Make sure that your data is being stored and stored safely. In the event of an attack, that's the one piece that we just, if you had backups that were working properly, a lot of these errors could be omitted very quickly. So when we see an attack go through, hopefully it didn't get into the backups, and we can basically just shut the attackers down, rebuild the backups, and then the business is back in business within a day. But if you haven't been checking those backups, if you haven't really given it much thought, if you've just assumed it's happening, it might not be. And there are many instances where it isn't. So that is the end of my presentation. I will close this, and so we can get back to our screens. If anyone has any questions, I would love to hear them.
Okay, so it looks like we've got one coming in through the chat box, and feel free to either unmute or just throw it in the chat box. Let's see, if we want to look into cybersecurity in a more technical context or more thoroughly inform ourselves about this topic, do you have any suggestions or resources to look into?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for a lot of business owners, what I would suggest is taking a look at certification organizations like CompTIA. So CompTIA is a great certification organization that will put you through training to get you starting in levels like the CompTIA Security Plus or CompTIA A Plus certification. This is going to be a pretty detailed dive into cyber, into what you can do to better protect yourself and your business. And it's going to be a big benefit to you. Right now, the cybersecurity workforce is just staggeringly unstaffed. We have 1 million open jobs in cyber. Just here in Wisconsin, there are 5,000 open jobs in cybersecurity. Our average salary, what we're paying, is about 150 to 125 to 150 a year for most of these positions. We can't fill them. And so anything that folks can do to get better certified can, potentially be an opportunity to improve their businesses and improve their positions in careers. Oh, and I see somebody shared the link to CompTIA. Yeah, I am a big fan of CompTIA. I'm also a very, very big fan of InfoSec. And so if you Google InfoSec, you can get a lot of really, really great training. They're a company that does a lot of work with business and government. I've been a fan of them for many, many years and really believe in the products that they're putting out there. From a security standpoint, how do you feel about on-site backups versus cloud? I actually like both. I'm a big fan of both. I'm a big fan of backing up as much as you possibly can. So on-site backups are great. It does offer the ability to store a lot of information right very close to you, obviously. The problem is that on-site backups are normally connected to a network. If you have a ransomware attack that hits the network, potentially your backups are going to be encrypted as well. And so therefore you can't rebuild your business from your backups if they don't exist. Then you have the cloud. And so if you're backing up to a cloud, the likelihood of a ransomware attack generating from a network into the cloud system just isn't there yet. We don't know if it's going to be that way forever. But we do see that as a good opportunity. And so I really am a fan of both because it potentially gives you, that double backup. Oh yeah, okay. So we have a backup of that backup, and then offsite over a VPN tunnel. Yep, you're doing the best job you possibly can. VPN tunnels, virtual private network is what VPN stands for. It really creates kind of like an individual pipe from one lead to another. And so it's the safest connection right now that we can get. I was blown away last week. I had to give a presentation to a group of sixth graders. And so I not only do I teach professionals how to be better at cybersecurity, I also every once in a while end up in a classroom. And I had a 12-year-old tell me that every time he gets online and plays his video games, he opens up a VPN first. I was blown away by that. I just couldn't believe that a 12-year-old kid was knew about this. When I go into businesses all the times and I ask them if they're using a VPN, and you're like, what? What's a VPN? So yeah, I am hopeful for our future when I see kids that young really getting into cybersecurity as well. Any other questions?
Well, we really thank you, Brian, for this time. We thank everyone for their time. If you are currently a part of our small business community through our loans, please connect with me if there's additional resources or training or a consultant that you'd like a one-on-one session for your small business with. Tyler and I will work regionally to try and find you that resource. As I had noted, anyone that has a small business loan with our organization has the ability to work with accountants, digital, social media marketers, and we'll also be announcing some more information about how attorneys can assist you with your small business. So lots of resources for small businesses. We are a nonprofit, so anytime you have small businesses that just need a sounding board or a connector, feel free to connect with myself or Tyler, and we're here to help you. Okay, everyone, we will have this information up. If there's any additional information that you want from Brian, just please coordinate that through myself and Tyler. And thank you all for your time.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.